Hello, everybody, and welcome in. Today's the 9th of April, and welcome into the IDP Plus Mailbag Show. He is Joe Harlow at Jolo63. I am Justin Frye at JFryeDP on X. You can find all our work also as well on the IDP Plus website. You can get a hold of us as well as the rest of the team over at IDP Plus on our Discord server. If you're a subscriber, get access to all of us all the time. You can ask questions, specific questions about your league and all sorts of stuff in real time rather than just once a week like you get us. And as always, just ask us questions. We'll get through however many we can. The website or the email, is mailbag at idpguys.org. I know. Well, excuse me. Sorry, we're giving away some couple jerseys later on in the month. So you get sending us questions. I believe. I'm not sure the exact details. Gotta get more info on that, but. You send us questions, you get entries into it to win either, Nico Collins signed jersey or
Antoine Winfield
Jr. signed jerseys. So
if you check out IDP_plus on X, you will see there is a tweet with information on it, and there should be a link in the description for that giveaway.
Absolutely, yeah. If you just go to our website too, there's a couple banners where you can go in and put in some information. Thank you, Shandon. It was a pretty quiet news week. I don't know. Did you guys? I was traveling last week, and I can't remember what day the Diggs news broke. But do you remember talking about it?
Yeah, I think Jameson and I, and also another shout out to Jameson at Jameson Rules with the Z for filling in.
Yeah, thanks for calling in.
But yeah, I believe we did talk about it.
Okay.
I can't remember if we talked about it on that or the Rider Dynasty podcast. Either way, what are your thoughts on it, I guess, since you weren't here to talk about it last week?
It's good for Stroud. He's now apparently quarterback 1 on KTC, if you haven't seen that.
Okay.
He's barely over Josh Allen. It's like 9,999 versus 9,997 per value, so it's basically you could trade a 1 for 1. Pretty interesting.
Okay.
Other than that, I don't know how to feel about the receivers. Diggs and Collins are both in contract years. Dell's coming back from an injury. And honestly, I think all three of them played the X last year. So what are they really going to – how are they going to align them is my biggest first question.
I definitely think Diggs is going to be the slot guy. He was struggling a lot more at X last year than he had been in the past. I think he has definitely lost the steps. I think that'll be the most logical fit for him. But, yeah, it's an interesting core.
Interesting because, I think Dell's basically only played in 3 wide receiver sets last year. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how they align them because they basically alternated who was the X between those two based on what kind of formation they were in. Nico was almost exclusively that in like 12 personnel, whereas 11 3 wide receiver sets was pretty much exclusively Dell.
Yeah, and I think early on too, Nico wasn't getting a lot of time. Like he and Dell were more rotating, I believe, at the beginning of the year, which was weird. But
yeah, Dell came on as the year went on, and they kind of started playing him more when they realized what they had, I think.
Yeah.
And Diggs gave up. Well, they basically pushed all his guarantees to year 1 and at the end of the year. So that's pretty interesting.
Interesting deal.
Yeah. I don't hate it for Houston.
No, I get it for both sides, honestly.
It's a little confusing from Buffalo for me. I got to be honest. What kind of a headache really was Stephon Diggs to just get a 2 for him?
Apparently a very big one.
Because they took on more dead money by trading him than his value was already. Yeah,
it had to have been a massive headache.
Yep. And then I don't think there hasn't been much on Rushy Rice besides he's cooperating with authorities. Nothing on what charges or anything.
Oh, I guess the other piece of news is rookie defensive or prospect T'Vondre Sweat was arrested for a DWI, I believe, a couple days ago. So something to note. Not ideal for him right before the draft.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Malik Nabers' character concerns?
You know, I'm sure he has such a terrible character and is going to fall so far in the draft.
Yeah, I'd love for him to fall all the way to. Let him fall all the way to 34. We'll take Jayden Daniels at 3 and take him at 34.
Yeah, like it's smoke screens. It's teams
Right.
just kind of being crappy people to try to take these kids down. Like Nabers is 21, maybe. Not even, I don't think. It's like just take a kid down just to.
It's going 5 or 6. Like
Yeah.
realistically, he's going to the Chargers or he's going to the Giants.
I'm going to push back on the Chargers. I don't think they take a receiver, but that's not the point here. But yeah, I think he's top 7 at worst. Like unless he tears his ACL the next week, but next couple weeks. But even
I don't see the Titans taking him.
That just like trades, but
Gotcha.
Like, yeah, it's so dumb. It's frustrating to see. It's like I think there are actually flaws with his game, and it's like that don't get talked about. It's like, but you're gonna manufacture some character thing just to. It's a gross business. And it's frustrating.
Yeah.
And also, like he's a wide receiver. Of course, he's going to be a little high maintenance. It's almost a concern at this point if your receivers aren't high maintenance.
I was gonna say, what type of good receiver doesn't want the football?
I know, like it's stupid. Hopefully, it doesn't like stress him out or make him lose out on some money or stuff.
Yeah, I doubt it. Yeah, but we'll see. We got a couple of questions this week. The first one was.
And a reminder before we get into it is if you have questions while watching, drop them in the chat and we'll get to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first question we got was from Open 24 Hours. And he asked, who are the first-round busts at quarterback and receiver this year? So what do you think?
Starting with quarterback, let's take J.J. McCarthy out of this. I think there's a clear path to him busting. Just he is significantly more of a project, so I think we just take him out of there. Then really just want to talk about the top 3 guys, the Drake May, Caleb Williams, and Jayden Daniels. For me, it's a pretty clear Jayden Daniels, and a lot of that is combination of frame and the fact that he thinks he's Johnny Knoxville and just runs like an absolute train while also being super small. I think there's a real injury risk there, which I don't know if that counts as busting per se, but still factors in. And then I think there are real concerns with him as a passer. I have really been lowering on him a lot as I've watched more of him. Still a lot of talent, but I think there's a lot. It's very Justin Fields, but without the gigantic frame and rocket arm. He's very accurate. His progressions are pretty poor, especially for a 5th-year starter, and doesn't attack the middle of the field much, which you need to do in the NFL. So I think it's him. I still think he can be a really good quarterback. I like him a lot more for fantasy than I do for the pros, but there's just some concerns there.
I actually went a different way a little bit with this. So to be honest, quarterbacks. You just put Sean's message up for a second. It made me laugh.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But
in the good way.
Yes. So I didn't really. I mean, if I'm putting a name to it, it's probably Daniels. But realistically, it's hard to call any of them a bust before I even know where they're at.
Of course.
Because
of course.
Honestly, the reason you look at so many teams and why these quarterbacks bust, and let's look at Mac Jones. He's an easy one because I'm a Pats fan. Year one, great, Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels leaves. Matt Patricia comes in year two. They still don't put anything around him. He tanks. Year three, they're like, oh, we'll bring back Bill O'Brien. Don't fix the offense. And they crushed his confidence at that point already. And he had no weapons still. So, same with Fields to some extent. He has no weapons. He has no line. And he's trying to do everything by himself. They're not. He took off in the end of 2022 when they kind of catered the offense more to what he does well versus trying to have him run the Luke Getsy, Matt LaFleur, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan offense. Because that was never going to be him. That's why I never thought he was a great fit. When people talk about putting Fields on the Vikings, I was like, well, one, I mean, they're not trading in division. And two, it's a terrible fit scheme-wise for what he should be doing. So without knowing where they land, Daniels scares me, May scares me, honestly, and McCarthy scares me. All three. I mean, it's pretty much the one I feel good about is Williams, and that's because they put the pieces in place around him at this point. And to be honest, I actually kind of terrified of his OC. But that's actually Shane Waldron. I did not love the quote from JSN on him. So that one, I mean, but I think Caleb Williams can overcome that a bit. Washington, I'm terrified. They've got a better team around them, and it's a new coach, but I am not in love with Cliff Kingsbury as a play caller.
That's very kind of you to say that.
He really didn't do anything to help Kyler Murray progress as like an
he
NFL
hindered Kyler,
player.
if anything, honestly.
Exactly. So whichever quarterback goes there, it's going to scare me a bit because of Kingsbury being the OC. Patriots have no weapons, so it'll be interesting to see what they put around whoever they draft there. Hopefully if they do take a tackle at 34 and wait to 66, I think it is, to take a receiver, then I would like to see the rookie quarterback sit the whole year. Which will be hard to do. The Vikings are the other one that I feel pretty good about, and whichever quarterback goes there, that's the one that I'm like, they should be in good shape because that coaching staff, that regime has kind of earned a little bit of trust, I feel like, with that fan base. So I don't think that scheme, especially where he's an offensive head coach versus the Patriots and Commanders have defensive head coaches that can, if the quarterback does well, lose their OC, or they could fire their OC and bring in a completely new system. So stuff like that is just something to watch out for a little bit.
I think landing spot, that's a great point. Totally see it with talented quarterbacks all the time who bust out because they have garbage around them. Or then you see like Robert Griffin III, who had great talent and then was just in a shitty spot, so they broke him.
Yep, that is, I mean, honestly, that's a really solid comp for Daniels. That 1 year elite level production, mobile passer, took too many big hits, like, and then you put him in Washington, maybe, like, that'd be So
I really I would love to see at Washington, honestly, just either trade back from 2 or just take Joe Alt or Olu at 2 and then take Rattler in the second. I think would make a lot more sense for their style, what they're doing, but they're not going to do it. That's a ballsy thing to do anyway. So it's a weird team.
Yeah. And then the other piece he asked about was wide receivers. So you want to hit on your receiver discussion?
Yeah. So the name you put is one of my favorites in the class, and I agree that he, of the potential first rounders, is the biggest bust potential in Adonai Mitchell. Just there's a lot of inconsistency on tape. There's a lot of weirdness with the route running, some inconsistency effort-wise. There's a lot of weirdness now, or lack of effort on a lot of plays. Now, a lot of that is Texas' offense is very much half field reads. So if he's not in the play design, you see it a lot more in college football now. Does that make it okay? No, but it's not the same. it's
coaching,
not the same thing as
like that. The coach is going to get on them if they don't do that, and they will not see the field.
Yeah, I think you put in your blurb in the show doc that you could see him turning into a DK Metcalf or Chase Claypool. And it's like the one-to-one player comps I don't necessarily agree with, but level-wise, yeah, I could totally see him busting out the league and being on his fourth team in 4 years with 20 total catches in 4 years. I could see that. Or I could see him being a possible all-pro.
It's
Brian
general
Thomas
type.
Go ahead, sorry.
Downfield X receiver types. I mean, Claypool has never really been that.
Yeah. But then Brian Thomas Jr., also someone who I have a little bit of concerns with, not as much, just very limited roster. It's a very DK Metcalf where it's like, what can you really do? Were you held back or offense?
So I feel like part of that one, at least for Thomas, not trying to say that it's not a red flag, but I think he started playing football in high school, senior year of high school. So he's fairly raw as a receiver in general.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean,
yeah,
it's still,
I agree. It's notable,
especially when he's going to wind up being drafted, most likely to be an X receiver on a team that's decent. You put in like Jacksonville. You put him in. I guess he could wind up in Cincinnati, taking over for T. Higgins. But there's a bunch of landing spots that are kind of scary for what he could be.
Agreed.
Sorry.
One other name I wanted to bring up for busts, and this is going to be a spicy take, and this is purely for fantasy. I think this player is going to be very good, but for the NFL, and I know it's one of your favorites, Justin, but Lad McConkey. The hype is crazy right now, and I get it. He's a good player. He's fun, great athletic profile. The thing is, he does not project as a true number one receiver, and I worry that if he does go to a Buffalo, which does make some sense as a fit and landing spot range for picks, I think a lot of people are going to really hype him up and put him near those top three wide receivers. And if like Odunze goes to the Giants and they're rolling out Drew Lock or Daniel Jones, I could see some players wanting to take McConkey with Josh Allen over him. I think that'd be a really bad decision. I just think I don't see him ever being like a true 100 catch, 80, maybe not even 80 catch sort of guy with consistent game to game basis. I could see him being a really solid number two, but just it's not bust per se as much as like this guy's probably never going to be more than a couple years of wide receiver 15, especially with a small frame and the injury history. And he missed so much time at Georgia. It's like players typically don't consistently miss 3 to 4 games a year in the college and then be fully healthy.
You know where I want to put him if I could? Pittsburgh.
That'd be, yeah.
To me, so McConkey, what you want for him is the Tyler Lockett role with DK Metcalf.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's the goal, is you want him to be the flanker on a offense with an X that's not a huge target hog. So something like pairing him with George Pickens would be a fantastic fit in my mind.
I totally agree with that. That's a really good one.
So, and honestly, Lockett's a pretty good comp for him for what I would hope for. Honestly, that's a bit of a ceiling too, because he was top 15 for 6 years in a row.
Something like that.
It's kind of wild, but
again, I don't want to say Lad McConkey is a bad player or going to be. I think he will maybe get a little overdrafted, but whatever. Don't really care. I think it's more of a fantasy concern.
It's kind of
he's not going to have high volume.
Gross to say, but anyone outside the top three has a higher bust potential in my mind. Not for what they are. I think they're going to all wind up basically being overdrafted.
Yes.
And essentially, people talk about how good this wide receiver class is. And what it's really good at is there's not a ton of difference in my mind, really, between wide receiver 4 and wide receiver 15.
Yes.
Totally. So if you tear down off of those picks and picking the first round receivers and take some of these second and third round receivers and get multiple shots at them, you might hit on one of those Tank Dell type guys that just blows up that no one really saw coming, except for Dynasty Santa. Shout out. But it's gonna be so role specific with where they wind up. So,
yeah. There's so many good, talented players in this class that it's like, yeah. I mean, Jalen Polk is my wide receiver. He's in the 4 to 6 range for me. But then, like, what's really the difference between him and a Javon Baker, who's closer to wide receiver 20? Like, it's really not that far.
Yeah, there's going to be some difference in draft capital and therefore where they wind up on depth charts. But, like, essentially, everyone cast off a lot of those third-round guys last year and fourth-round guys, and you wind up with finding steals later. So I'd rather take a couple shots on day 2 guys than put all my eggs in one basket with a first-rounder, besides the big 3. Those 3 are all going top 10, and they're going to be extremely insulated in value.
Yeah. I have a quick question for you while we're on the bust category that I meant to put in here. Of those top 3, which do you think is most likely to bust? And not due to like injuries, like
probably Nabers. He has the highest ceiling just because of his athleticism to me over Marv. That's, I think, why you see a lot of people on X saying, well, they're really close, but I don't know that I quite have the guts to put him over him. It's just because Marv's a little safer. But Nabers' profile is more of a slot guy running slot fades and some of these other routes that aren't NFL routes. He's got the ability to do it, but he's a little more of a take the crazy athlete that he is and let him do some of this stuff. And the other 2 are prototypical X's. Nabers is a flanker. He's a Z. He should not be playing on the line of scrimmage for the most part. I do think he can do it, but he's much more Garrett Wilson.
Where he's best,
which is why I really like Mike Williams landing on the Jets for Wilson, because Williams is going to be the X on the line of scrimmage, and Wilson will be off the line of scrimmage, not getting pressed every time. So,
totally agree. Yeah, Nabers would be the one I would pick there too. I think he's awesome. Like, he's my 3rd wide receiver in the class, probably 2nd for fantasy, but then still like a top 7, 8 player in the class. So, like, I think he's awesome. But point here, Odunze, because of separation. I actually don't see separation as a huge issue for him. Like, he can do it. I think it was more the offense was like, and Penix is like, I'm just going to throw jump balls every play. So I do think Odunze does separate a lot better than is given credit for. But this is a really good point that if Odunze does bust, this will be what. And the thing with Odunze, if he busts, I think it's going to be more that he's turns into a solid wide receiver 2 on a team. I don't see him like totally bombshelling out of the league, but maybe he just turns into just a decent, solid player.
And that's really the point of why I put Nabers over Odunze is basically I think Marvin Harrison and Rome Odunze are unlikely to like really kill you if they don't hit their ceilings. Like I think Nabers' floor is lower, I guess. That's the way I'll say it. But he could absolutely be like a dynamic slot receiver if that's all he is.
Yeah. Totally agree there. All right. So before we we have one more question here before we get into our draft fits. That is, I lost 2. It was from
Kyle Lesty.
Thank you. Josh Sweat, where are we at on him as a sell, hold, buy even?
So he can't really show it easily, but he sent us his roster. Sweat in general, he was talking about positional scarcity, and it's a fairly shallow bench. And he already had a couple other edges that were decent. and it looked like another. He had a few 2025 picks and a couple high 2024 picks as well, single quarterback. So for me, I would be selling him in his situation. He's not like a high pass rush win rate guy. He probably will do better this year than he did last year. I mean, I think he and Reddick were pretty similar in pass rush win rate, and their sack totals weren't all that similar. There were a few. Reddick was a few sacks ahead, and I don't honestly foresee the Eagles playing Sweat a whole bunch more because Reddick's gone. They're gonna play Huff. They're gonna play Nolan Smith. Like, I don't think Sweat's gonna see a big bump in playing time. So I don't see him doing drastically better this year. So if someone's willing to buy him off of you for, I don't know, it was hard to tell because there wasn't a true league size. All I could gather was he had the 113 pick, which means there's at least a 14-team league, maybe 16. So I would probably sell for, start off trying for maybe a late 2. I don't even know. Like, it's so hard to gauge with how teams value these picks, because honestly, if I could, I'd go in and look at his rookie draft board from the last couple of years and see where the edges are going a little bit, because you kind of have to know. If I were him, I'd want to trade out and potentially just draft one of the top 4 rookies. I'm including Chop Robinson there because I do, like I said, I think he's a year away probably still. But what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, honestly, he's someone with that shallow of a bench I'd really be fine cutting. I don't think he's really going to be much more than a roster clog, minus matchups here and there, and just with it being super shallow benches. I guess a sell, but in a deeper league, I'd be fine holding him.
Yeah, if I could, with his roster construction too, I'd be trying to get a receiver. Maybe I move plus on first-round pick, or even one of my later first-round picks, 113 even, to get a good receiver to pair
Honestly,
with.
something that I think could be interesting and doable is he had Treylon Burks. So if maybe you combine Burks with Josh Sweat and go for like a Quentin Johnson, just an upside shot with less players in front of him and a good quarterback.
So yeah, he had QJ too.
Oh, did he? Dang it.
That's why I was like a little scared of his receivers, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But he's good at 101 and 104, so he's going to fix that real quick.
Yes, but something like that. Just combine him with another player, or he had. There was a Julian Love there, so maybe combine them and go for an upper level D end or safety, something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So before we get into draft fits now, I want to talk about the IDP Plus Rookie Guide, which is now live and ready to download for a limited time price of $9.99. We're not even hitting double digits. This is our comprehensive, one-of-a-kind draft guide for 2024, and you can get it right now, like we just said, for $9.99, either in link in description, through X, or on our website, idpguys.org. Check out the link. Download your copy today. A lot of over 100 prospects will be in there. We update it every week. And yeah, it's a great fit to get a leg up on your league mates. Draft fits.
Draft fits we're going with the East this one. We got to fly through these. So
yeah,
AFC East. We'll start there. The Buffalo Bills. I think you took the offense on this one.
I did, and I went with a player that I struggle with a lot, and that is Xavier Leggette, the wide receiver athlete from South Carolina. Very raw player with really only one year of production at South Carolina, but like we discussed with Brian Thomas Jr., he has not been a receiver for that long. He was a quarterback his last year in high school, kind of. It's a triple option team, so he just ran and was receiver before that there, but still, he does not have a lot of wide receiver talent, so the late breakout is a little less concerning and has concerned me less looking at the film more. But dude's a freak athlete. He's really good with contested catches and winning downfield and yards after the catch. And the biggest thing with him is that he's a big receiver. Buffalo is full of guys like Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, and just not very big receivers. So they need someone who can potentially be an X. I don't know if Leggette can be a true one, but he does have that size profile. So it gives someone who Josh Allen can either get the ball with and make some plays downfield or make some plays with yards after the catch. Leggette, I think, is an interesting fit. I wouldn't love him at 28, 29, but if they trade back a little bit, I would like that a lot.
I don't know how much you're going to trade back. There's so much buzz between him and the Panthers. So,
yeah.
But which would be a pretty interesting landing spot to pair him, Bryce Young, and Deontay Johnson together.
Yeah, that's something that we talked about last week. Jameson brought up as a fit.
Yeah. So, I took defense, and shout out to our buddy Ryland for putting us on Malik Mustapha. I mean, man, this guy's tape is fun. He's a really good box safety. He can do a little bit of both, but I do like him as a box safety. And in that Bills defense where they have really no one, I mean, I like Taylor Rapp, and he's an interesting name, but I don't think he's stopping Mustapha from climbing that depth chart. Get him in the fourth, fifth round probably for the Bills, who need to prioritize receiver. They need to prioritize a tackle. So
Edge.
Yeah. I mean, they've got a bunch of needs and not much draft capital. So,
did the Bills bring in another safety besides Rapp, or is it really just him and Hamlin right
now? Yes, and I don't remember who, but I didn't. Everything's at the bottom.
I feel like we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Anyway, I like this fit a lot. I like Mustapha as a player. I think it's fun.
Yeah.
Take your head off.
I do not have it in here, though. I'm pretty confident that they did bring someone in, though.
Yeah, I think you're right. But
can't remember who it is.
It's okay. Either way, fourth round upside shot at someone who'll take your head off. Like it.
Yeah.
Let's move to South Beach, Miami Dolphins.
This one was pretty easy for offense. I put it. Sorry, go ahead.
Since we don't do offensive line here, yeah, I feel like it's a pretty easy one.
Yeah, what are you gonna put a quarterback there? You can't. They just extended Mostert, so you don't put a running back there. The receivers are loaded, so don't put a receiver there. Guess where they're staying? Tight end. Jatavian Sanders. He would be a fun yak down the middle of the field guy for Tua. Honestly, I feel like this is something that the Dolphins offense has been missing for a couple of years to really help Tua take that next step, is one of those big security blankets. Because right now, especially Tyreek goes out, and you can just focus all of your attention to Waddle or vice versa. They need a third option, and I would put that guy as a tight end if I were them over another receiver. He can, like I said, make guys miss once he has the ball in his hands. He can run the seam, and he can block. So I think he's a really good fit behind Jonnu Smith to start off, and takes over as the year goes on. And I know they've been doing work on him. So
no additional comments. Like it. Good work. On defense, I went with a player who both of us don't love, but I think it does actually make some sense. And that is Adisa Isaac, the second pass rusher out of Penn State. He's an interesting profile, newer to the game, has shown improvement every year. Has some interesting traits and talent, but also he's a weird, like, kind of mix of some upside, but also a decent floor. I really don't know how to feel about him. I have like a third, fourth round grade on him, but
yeah, it's always interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it makes sense with Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, and Shaq Barrett all having big injury histories. Barrett and Phillips are on the last year of their deals, and then Bradley Chubb has a $30 million cap hit each of the next 3 years after this year. So cut candidate.
I see him in this mocked in like round 2, and I'm like, I don't see him win, honestly, rushing the passer. I see him getting cleanup sacks from either coverage or someone else pushing the pocket, and Isaac just being in the right place at the right time. And I'm just like, honestly, I'm like, just
saw so many plays on film where Chop did all the work, and then Isaac was just the quarterback ran into Isaac.
Yeah, I just don't love that. If I'm trying to draft an edge for IDP, if I'm being honest, but
I think he's going to be a decent football player, but I don't know. Yeah. I do think it makes sense, though. And I think with Weaver, their new D coordinator, who's the Ravens D-line coach, I think he can do some good work with him and maybe unlock some of that talent. And
he's got all the athletic measurables you would want to be a high-end pass rusher.
And if I'm going to trust anyone to mold one of those, it's going to be one of those Ravens guys. So
yeah, and so the fit makes sense, but that type of profile is not one I like to bet on, to be honest. Typically, your sack production doesn't skyrocket when you hit the NFL.
Yep. Typically, I would agree. I think it's an interesting fit, though. Absolutely. And definitely one where if that happens, if he goes the Dolphins trade back, get another third rounder, take him in the third round, that's definitely someone I would want to take towards the end of a IDP draft. I'm just like, let's see what happens here.
Absolutely. He'd be a great, if you've got a multi-year taxi eligibility, he would be a great stash.
So let's go to your team, New England Patriots.
Oof. You got the easy one on this one, picking the offense.
Yeah.
Really?
I didn't want to go quarterback just because, obviously that's a need. So I went a little interesting with Brian Thomas Jr. They need a receiver. There's some smoke. Jayden Daniels is a very potential pick at 3, so why not? And I know we're playing around with a mock draft right now where you actually pulled this off and jumped back up into the first round for Brian Thomas Jr. And I think the Patriots, they need a deep threat right now. Kendrick Bourne, I love as like your yards after catch guy, your kind of jet sweep, just break tackle sort of player. Pop Douglas is a good slot player. Juju exists. KJ Osborne's a good blocker. You need someone, a difference maker. And Brian Thomas Jr. can be that. Excuse me. And I think, move back up into the end of the first round, grab him, and you get a potential X there. And just pair him with Jayden Daniels. Whew.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I think there's a couple different pairings depending on who falls. If it's Daniels, I mean, obviously, Brian Thomas would be a fun fit if they're able to go up and get him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to see. I think Adonai is going to go in round 1, but there's been some. Could they move up for him? Basically, you're looking. The Patriots' whole roster is filled with flankers and slots.
Mm-hmm.
There's no X receiver on that team.
Yeah. It's very Bills.
Yeah, you're putting in man-to-man press coverage, and he's going to win. So you got on the list. Even like Tez Walker in the second or third round makes some sense, especially if you pair him with Drake May as like a developmental upside shot there.
Someone can stretch the field.
Leggette makes some sense if you want to put him in as the X. Even I don't love him, but Keon Coleman, you think you can develop the guy. Those types of players are the receivers I would like to see one of in New England next year.
Makes sense. Who'd you have on defense?
I put in J.D. Bertrand. He is a linebacker out of Notre Dame. So, as a Pats fan, I would be disappointed if they take an offense or a defensive player in the first 2 rounds. I would expect it to go quarterback, either left tackle or receiver in rounds 2 and 3. So, therefore, I had to go down to day 3, and Bertrand fits the mold of kind of what they look for on defense. Smart guy, reasonably athletic, can fill in gaps well and make tackles. Pretty good dropping in zone and decent in man, I'll say. So he's a guy, if he goes there in the, I don't know, 4th, 5th round, something like that, he's an interesting name to like stash for a year and hope they turn into something. But linebackers are so hit and miss that he's a little scary too. But I mean, really, the Patriots defense, their safeties are in great shape. Their edges, I mean, assuming they can get Uche back next year, are in great shape. So like, it really left linebacker because Bentley's, I don't know, 28, 29, something like that. So that's the spot where you could see someone else coming in.
Good ball player.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I'm just worried about draft capital, which I didn't have to here. So.
Makes sense. Now, the last team in the AFC East is the New York Aaron Rodgerses.
Yeah, so I mean, it would have been easy to throw Brock Bowers here, and I do think that this is a fantastic spot for Bowers if they were to draft him. I think it's likely they go tackle in round 1, but
they should.
If you put him there, he fits a lot of what they want to do, even though Rodgers doesn't typically target him. But didn't put him there. I went receiver. Jayden McMillan from Washington, the 3rd option out of UW this past year. Just hurt quite a bit, but he's kind of in the mold of that big slot guy, aka what they wanted Alan Lazard to be, what Aaron Rodgers tends to gravitate towards. I think you comped him to Kobe Myers. Yeah. So, I mean, that seems like the type of fit for me that makes a lot of sense with Aaron Rodgers. And I think he complements what they have in Mike Williams and Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense to me. I love McMillan. Is it McMillan or McMillian?
I think there's another guy in there, but I could be wrong.
Either way, I think he's an awesome player. I really like him. He's going to be a top 75 player on my big board overall, and I think he's going to fall a little bit just with so many receivers in this class. Good player. For the defensive side, I went with another early day 3 type player in Bo Brade, the safety out of Maryland. He is an interesting prospect, had a really good Senior Bowl. I think he makes more sense as a box safety. Jet safety room actually isn't great with really Chuck Clark and Tony Adams being the only real names in there, and Clark coming off a massive injury. And Brade did show a little bit of time at, I think he split almost 50-50 times as like the slot / box safety and deep. He actually was 1-on-1 with Marvin Harrison Jr. for a little while when they played and held his own. Didn't dominate or anything, but was decent, which that's a pretty good sign. I think he definitely a hard hitter, someone who I think does project better in the box than he does deep. Just a little bit of a limited athlete, especially change of direction wise. And I think he's one of those guys who, if he goes to the Jets in the 4th, 5th round, there's a legit chance he is a day 1 starter, maybe day 2 starter, and could be a flyer for an IDP league. Some one of those guys like a Josh Metellus this year who was like, oh, who is this guy? He's actually getting, or last year at least, it was like, oh, who's this guy? He's actually making some plays, and then maybe is actually useful for a team for free.
Yeah. Or Jordan Howden.
Yeah, it's a better one.
I mean, Metellus makes sense. It's just he'd been in the league a little bit.
Yeah, I was trying to think of like who's a
absolutely, and I get it. It's hard to do on that.
Yeah, Howden's better.
I like it. I think, did they bring in Jayden Hicks, our favorite safety?
They did.
Okay. I think, yeah, because that would be fun if they get him at the top of the
I just don't think they're in range without having the 2nd round pick.
You think he's going that high?
I think he's going to go in the top 75. I think he's going to go top 50, top 60. I don't think
they should be around 70, I think, with that 3rd.
Something like that, but I thought they were like 78, but
somewhere there.
Either way, if they could, that'd be sweet. But
I like it. Makes sense. And that wraps the AFC. So let's hop over to the NFC.
Let's travel over there. And you can also travel with Expedia, who is our newest partner that we are thrilled to announce, that we have partnered with your one-stop shop for the best prices in the travel world. Check the link in the description, and you can head over to Expedia for their spring sale, where you could save up to 25% off select hotels. They will always find the best deals for you, so you can just enjoy the ride. Get your next adventure planned today, whereas our adventure is to the NFC East, and more specifically to Arlington.
Yeah, you took the low-hanging fruit on this one.
Yeah, we're not going to spend much time on this, but Jonathan Brooks, running back, Texas. He is my running back 1. He would be a near first-round grade had he not had the ACL injury. The only concern there is they don't have anything else at running back, so they kind of need him right away. So maybe they do go with a different back, but I think immense talent. I think would, especially later on in this year and next year, would be an awesome player for them.
Yeah, it's okay. I also took the low-hanging fruit. I just didn't go with the hometown guy in Cooper. I said linebacker Junior Colson, who I think also makes a lot of sense. Big thumper. That seems to be the type that Jerry gravitates towards over like the smaller guy. I know Cooper's 230, but I feel like Jones seems to go after the bigger guys a little more. So someone like Colson, who's over 240, I think fits them a little better and should be there in the late second.
Yep. Couldn't agree more there.
He'd be a lot of fun. His stats are only a little low because Michigan was so good they didn't have to play everyone that much. Right. It's the same reason McCarthy's stats are a little less than everyone else's, because how often did they play their starters into the fourth quarter?
Awesome team. But yeah, I love that fit. Fills that Leighton Vander Esch hole really easily.
Yeah, he'd be so much fun there. Okay, question for you then. If he winds up there, where would he slot in amongst edges for you? Obviously he's a linebacker, but the top 3 for me right now are all.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Okay. The top 3 for me right now are all edges because they're the ones that I can project into a solid role regardless of what team they wind up on.
Again, without knowing the landing spot, that's hard. But if I was a team who really needed linebacker help, I would really consider putting Colson up there with those guys. But
yeah, I would probably put him in ahead of Latu just for the medicals scare me.
Yeah.
And then I like the other 2 kind of similarly enough that if I really needed a linebacker, you could probably make an argument for him to be the top IDP. I assume there will be another linebacker picked ahead of him, but
yeah, I assume so. But that's an interesting question.
Like the Eagles, if they were to trade, no, they have picked 52. They picked up another 2 from someone, right?
From New Orleans in the Trevor Penning trade.
Oh, so
yeah. So let's move to the other New York team. Our third New York team today. Look at us go. The Giants. Who did you have on offense?
So I didn't go with the low-hanging fruit here. Obviously, receiver at 6 or quarterback, whichever one they take, would be great. And they should probably hit on the second one, the other one in day 2. For me, I would, if I'm them, I'd probably go receiver and then come back with a quarterback stash because they're fine. So I went running back. Singletary is solid, but to me, he's a platoon guy, and they don't have anyone to platoon him with. So I went with Will Shipley, someone I think he might be able to sneak onto a day 3 early. I feel like he's just been around so long because he was such a highly thought of college recruit that people just aren't talking about him enough. And to me, he would be a fantastic fit as a change of pace, third down back. I hate this because it's kind of like the ceiling for that type of role, but it's Tony Pollard to Zeke. I mean, Singletary isn't Zeke. Shipley would have a lot of work to do to beat Pollard. I don't think he's the runner that Pollard is, but as a receiving weapon, he's not that dissimilar from Jahmyr Gibbs or Christian McCaffrey. I say that very tentatively, but I do think he can do a lot of the things that you do with those other guys, the elite receiving backs. He's just not the runner that they are.
Definitely similar mold. These can use in similar ways.
So, and I do think he will be there in the 4th round potentially. He could go round 3, depending if someone really likes the fit, putting him, I don't know, in Washington with Brian Robinson or something. But I guess they have Eckler there. I forgot about that. Yeah. But yeah,
makes sense though. On defense, I went with Orhorhoro, the defensive lineman out of Clemson. This just adds a lot more juice to their defensive front. Him, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, and then Kayvon Thibodeau. That's a pretty scary front. I would not like to go up against that. He's not just a pass rusher, solid against the run, nothing to write home about there, but he's a big player, still relatively new to the game, has a lot of room to grow. I think if he's there in the 3rd round, that would be a slam dunk for them.
Yeah, makes sense. I like it.
All right, so now let's go to the Eagles. Second to the last team for the day. And on offense, I went with a deeper name, Jared Wiley, the tight end out of TCU. He is a massive tight end, 6'7", 270, I think it was. Forgetting that one now. Or not double guessing that one now, but massive tight end. I think he's really versatile still as well, despite the size. He is able to be used like H-back in the slot, in line. Good hands, good seam threat. I think he'd be a really good tight end too there, with potential to take over for Dallas Goedert, similar how Goddard took over for Ertz. I think it's possible, especially they had a good tight end too, who has gone now, who I'm forgetting about.
Stoll?
No, I think it was a couple years ago.
Okay.
Anyway, but they want to be able to use a bigger front, especially now that their O-line is less elite with Kelsey gone. So I think they could use the second tight end more, or they should. And I think there is real buzz that he could be tight end 2 drafted, which if he ends up going into the 2nd round, then that's definitely stock up.
Yeah. I forgot when I was rambling on about how badly the Cowboys need a linebacker and start talking about the Eagles, that guess who I put on the Eagles? Peyton Wilson.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He seems likely to be one of the first 2 linebackers picked in the draft. Depending on who you listen to, he's either linebacker 1 or linebacker 2. And getting some round 1 buzz. And Eagles linebacker depth chart is, to be honest, terrible. Devin White is just not what anyone thought he was when they picked him, when the Bucs picked him at 5 that year. Wilson is a crazy athlete. The only concern would be medical. But if he wound up in Philly, he's not just a dynasty option. He's a redraft pick. He'd probably become the top IDP pick in dynasty leagues too, over a lot of those edges because of the landing spot. Did they hire Fangio? Am I thinking of?
Yes.
Okay. Man, this offseason's dragging. Just waiting for the draft.
So much movement.
But that would, him and Fangio's defense would be a lot of fun. And he can cover, he can blitz, he can really lower the shoulder. So I think it'd be a fun fit.
Could be. And makes sense. I'm not as high on him as a prospect as a lot of people are, especially as the league seems to be. But if he goes first round, even at 42, is that their first pick they have from New Orleans? Whatever it is, I think, or some movement around there. I think, he becomes a top tier IDP option. even if like he struggles out of the gate like Jack Campbell did this year, it's still the first linebacker taken is super valuable.
Yeah.
And I'm not comparing them as players. They're not.
No, I know. I'm just trying to think. That it was surprising Campbell couldn't climb that depth chart a little bit. And I would be shocked if Wilson didn't open the year as at least linebacker 2 behind White, if not ahead of White, because White shouldn't be the Mike.
Yeah.
So last team, Commanders. We'll stick with our tight end theme on offense. And I threw Jaheim Bell in here, who is a tight end that I really liked his tape. He's not the biggest guy, but he is a really, really good athlete. Great after the catch, great with the ball in his hands. And whenever he got the opportunity, he just popped. Like, you see him get targeted enough back when he was on South Carolina or even this year with Florida State. Like, they had enough weapons around them a lot of the times that they didn't really use him as much as I would have liked to have seen. But, man, you watch him running away from DBs on film, and it's just like, why isn't he being used more? I feel like that type of weapon, he could easily displace Zach Ertz pretty quickly, I think. Or play the move role while Ertz plays the inline role. You wanted to put 2 tight ends out there. So I think he would be a good complement and a good long-term fit in Washington.
I agree. Only concern there is, as we talked about quarterbacks, is Cliff Kingsbury. Just don't trust that offensive mind at all. I know on the Ryder Dynasty podcast, when we talked about him, it was like, great player, so much talent, but the size, he's got to go with the right scheme. I'm just worried that what that team is. It could be Washington, but I think this is a fun one. I had not thought of this fit until I saw it in the doc, and it's like, that makes a lot of sense. I really like this. Good job by you.
Thanks. That Ertz in Arizona was fun, so get him a better athlete.
Yep. So the last name we are going to discuss today for the Commanders is a replacement at edge. They traded both of theirs this past trade deadline, so they need one pretty badly. I went with Chris Braswell, the other edge out of Alabama. I think he's getting super underrated at this point. He's a good player, still pretty raw, despite being a 4th-year player. He only started this year, which, I mean, can't really blame him much for, with guys like Will Anderson. Ever heard of him? And then Dallas Turner, who's potential top 10 pick this year. So he actually had very similar numbers to Turner. He had a better pressure rate. I think they had the same number of sacks, but the metrics were pretty good. He does have a lot of work he needs to do with refinement as a pass rusher, but I think that Dan Quinn's scheme, and with the additions they brought in, where he doesn't need to be the guy day one, I think he could really develop into a solid edge 2, whether for a fantasy team or your IDP team, the NFL or the fantasy team. I'm jumbling the words, but strong player, fun, and athletic. That's what they need.
I like him. I was surprised he didn't go back like what Turner did. Essentially, Turner went back because everyone had the same questions about him with Will Anderson on the other side. So it would have been nice. Braswell obviously wasn't seeing all the doubles that Turner was. So that one, that's probably the question teams have.
I think they have another young stud at edge rusher, so it probably would have been the same role for him. It's probably what it was. But, Alabama, it's a factory. That D-line, too. Braswell, Payne, Allen. So much Alabama.
Yeah.
They should just draft Turner at 2 and Braswell at 30 sticks or whatever and just have a whole Bama front. Why not?
Trade down and get him.
Yeah. Obviously, don't actually suggest that, but be funny.
Let's see.
Right. Any last second notes? I don't see any other comments in here.
I do not. Just so we got a bunch of great content coming out. Pull that up real quick.
Always.
So this week we've got a lot of offensive guys coming out. So I know top rookie quarterback article, running back articles have published so far. You wrote the quarterback
one has not yet published because I got it in late. I got it in late because I thought it was for next week. My bad, everyone.
Sorry. So you wrote quarterback and receiver,
Mhm.
or quarterback and receiver. Running back dropped today. That was Steve Hunkarter wrote that, and Steve McCory at Average Joe's. Sorry, Steve Hunter's at IDP Hunter. Steve McCory is writing a rookie tight end article. He's at Average Joe's _FF. And then Ricky's writing our IDP Plus 72. It's a big board of offense and IDP combined. So top 72. That'll drop Friday. And then I believe the following week, IDP Hunter, Steve's got a bunch of NFC draft previews dropping, as well as Joe Goodwin has a AFC North draft preview dropping. Get ready for the draft, which we're only a couple weeks away from.
It's crazy. Can't believe we're already there. Almost there.
Yeah. And we'll wrap up with the AFC and NFC West.
Yep.
Discussions.
Yeah. Thank you all again for tuning in, and we will see you same time, same place next week. And don't forget about the mailbag at idpguys.org, where you can send us questions where we will answer. Thank you to everyone who did ask questions, and we will see you next week. Be sure to subscribe to IDP Guys at idpguys.org. You can find our newsletter, subscribe, and get access to our Discord, or just see all of our great tools and content. Thank you all very much.
And make sure to go to our website and get some sign up to get some free swag.
Yes, absolutely. Check our Twitter and the website for more information on that, and the link in the description. And that'll do it. Thank you all again. May the force be with you, and stay safe out there.